Hi guys, Dewald Kirsten again here. Sorry it's been so long since my previous video, but I've been playing with some really cool toys. And today I'm going to talk a little bit about the new Sigma 20mm f1.4 art lens. I've been given this by Sigma to test out and review, and I've had it since about the beginning of December, and I've taken it with on a couple of shoots, from weddings to landscape shoots, general portrait sessions, just to play around with it and see what it's like and how it performs. And in quick, it's fantastic. It is super sharp. It is focuses quick. Everything about it is just awesome. In a couple of minutes I'll show you some sample images on a computer, and we can have a look at them and zoom in and all those things. But first let's talk about the lens itself. Here it is on my Canon 6D body. As you can see, it's not a small lens. It's quite big. And one of the main things that's bothering me about this lens, and the first thing I noticed when I took it out of the box, is that it's got this big bulbous front element. Now the built-in hood protects us quite nicely, so if you look at it from the side, you won't easily bump the bulb itself, but still it can be quite cumbersome, and it is something you need to be careful of. It's got this big lens cap that fits over the hood, but in saying that, because it's a wide angle lens and you're most likely going to be using this for landscapes and not for portraits due to distortion, you can't use filters on this. You can't put UV filters, you can't put polarizing filters, and you can't put your graduated filters on this, which is a bit of a letdown. If guys like Canon and Sigma and all the other manufacturers can make a lens of 16 to 35 or 17 to 40, or the crop sensor wide angle lenses 10 to 22 lenses, can make that with a filter thread, I'm pretty sure they could have managed to design this with a filter thread so that you could have used your filters on it. I can't see the reason why it's got this big bulbous element in the front and not have a filter thread. Now I know you do get filter holders that you can put on this. I'm pretty sure Lee will have one soon, and I know that the Nissi filters, which I've reviewed, has got an adapter for the 150mm system to fit onto this. Still, it's if you're a landscape shooter, you'll have to carry an extra set of filters to cover using this lens. That being said, it's a fantastic low light lens. Because of the f1.4 f-stop, this will be fantastic for astro images. I've not been able to shoot any astro work yet with this. It's simply not the right time of the year to get awesome Milky Way photos. The Milky Way is in a really wrong position for that at the moment. Hopefully Sigma will let me borrow it again in, let's say, end of April, May, to play around again with it, with some Milky Way images. But I shot with it over the weekend in low light situations. We did some lighting over the Karoo, and it was quite soft in the foreground, and I've focused it past the hyperfocal distance. I'll show you some of those images a little bit later on. So the main drawback on this lens is the fact that you can't use filters. The rest is the other thing is it's on the heavy side. It's not heavy. It's definitely heavier than the zoom lenses I've shot with. It's not as heavy as the Tamron 15 to 30 wide angle 2.8 lens, but it's not as light. It's got a pretty decent close-up focusing distance of 27.6 millimeters. So you can get pretty close with this, which can make for some really cool arty kind of stuff. And I shot it at a wedding, and I got some really nice low light photos just by pushing up the ISO a little bit without having to use flash in some situations. Now the build quality on this is awesome. It feels solid, it feels like quality, so I would definitely recommend this lens. Apart from the fact you got filters on, it is simply mind-blowing. And I've shot some took it with on like a family portrait session, played with it, and it was razor sharp. I didn't calibrate this using the docking station. I put it onto my camera first to see what it does. I know I had some issues with the 35mm f1.4 art lens on my two Canon 6D bodies. I've not seen this on this one yet. Look, at f1.4 you need to be pretty steady once you focused it, because it will that depth of field is so small that the tiniest shift will cause you to have a blurred photo. That's for sure, and that's the case on all very low aperture, very wide aperture lenses. But still, I would definitely buy this. One of the images I will show you earlier on is which I did of a couple, and again I played with this in various situations. This was shot at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. We still had the sun pretty high up in the sky, and I shot with it into the sun. I wanted to see what flares I get and what kind of effects I get on that. And to be honest, I was pretty blown away. One of the things, it's got the natural vignette this lens causes at those low apertures is awesome. It actually looked like I had filters on my lens when I took those photos. I've got another photo I shot against the sun as it was sitting over the mountains. I did it just stopped next to the road. Sun was in the right position, light was good. Stopped, jumped out, took the shot, and again I'll show you those images. I was very impressed with the way it handled the light from the bright sky versus the low light in the foreground. Especially one of the vineyards was the vineyards was pretty much in shadow already as the sun was setting, and it's got a fantastic starburst, sun starburst. So if you're landscape shooting, you like those things, it's got a really nice starburst with quite a few spikes in it. You can get away without using filters on this. You can simply shoot bracketed exposures and blend them, but I like to spend time in the field shooting and not behind the computer editing. So if I can cut down editing times on that, I will definitely prefer to shoot with filters. I've got some photos I did shoot in bracketed modes that I will show you. Took it out for one day completely, just shot landscapes with this, and I was pretty happy with it. And those images I'll show you in a minute or two. So long and short on this lens, if you're looking for a 20mm, which by the way Canon does not have a 20mm prime lens at that low f-stop. I think 24mm is the lowest they go, and then you get the zooms. So definitely it's a fantastic focal range to shoot at. Price wise on this, it's great. Nikon users have got a 24mm f1.8. It's about 4,000 Rand, or if you're watching from overseas, it's about, call it $300 more expensive than this. The benefit of that, it's got a filter thread on. You can use your filters on that lens. So for Canon users who wants a 20mm lens, this is your baby to go to. Like I said, I still have to use this for astro work, but in generally, superb lens, and I'm going to be really sad to send this back to Sigma after the review. Right, so let's get over to the images and have a look at what they look like. Now that we're back in front of the computer to look at some of the images that I shot with the Sigma 20mm f1.4 art lens. This is a small selection of images that I've selected to show you guys some of the qualities and things of the Sigma lens. Just to show you some basic stuff that I think is quite important and that I found quite amazing about this lens. So let's start off with a small series of images. They were all shot on a tripod of exactly the same scene. I tried to keep the exposure exactly the same at 1/3 of a stop overexposed, and I shot them at different apertures. My ISO stayed the same, obviously the focal range stayed the same. Just to give you a look at what the different feel is in the images. and to look at some fundamental things like landscape shooters are quite interested in see what the corner sharpness and edge sharpness is and the contrast of the images are like for different lenses. So let's start off here. This image was shot, all of these images I'm going to show you now is at ISO 100, 20mm, and then the different apertures and obviously different shutter speeds to accommodate the exposure. This was shot at f1.4. The focus being right in the foreground here. So let's zoom in. You'll see this is beautifully in sharp, but just behind that the blur will start, and at f1.4 that blur is quite significant, so much so that you can't make out any detail in a distance. Now the blur is really nice. It's a nice creamy soft bokeh that you get on this. So what's the next important thing? Let's look at the edge and corner sharpness. Now I'm going to look at all the images in the left hand corner here where you see this moss growing on this rock. So let's zoom in on that. On the f1.4 you've got some really good detail in the corners. I was actually quite surprised by that because it can be a bit soft, especially shooting so wide open. And with the big bulbous element in the front, you'll get a little bit of softness on the corners. Now, judging by how sharp the center is. If you look at the edges, there it is quite soft, and the same on the right hand side. In the brush over there, it's pretty soft. And in the foreground, if you look at particularly this little twig here, I'm going to show you later on. So let's have a look at the next one, which is f2. Let's just take it back to the corner. Right, there we go, f2. Let's zoom in. Pretty good detail. So let's compare between 1.4 and f2. Pretty much the same. Where you'll see noticeable differences in the background blur. That's 1.4, f2. You'll definitely see the details becoming a little bit more sharper. Next one I did was 2.8, which is a very popular shooting aperture. Again, corner sharpness is really good. You're still getting some softness on the edges with regard to that. See, your focus is still spot on that brush there, pin sharp. And again, you're starting to pick up quite a bit more detail coming out in the background. Next one I went to was f4, which is a really popular shooting aperture, and with this you've got really good sharpness in the foreground. You're starting to pick up quite a bit of detail. You can even start to see this fence leading down into the distance, which you can't see at the wider apertures. Corner sharpness, really good there. So let's just compare that quickly to the 2.8. Little bit crisper, but not much. Next one I went up is to 5.6. Pretty much the same. You can starting to see quite a bit more detail coming out, the fence leading off. You even see individual little bushes in the distance. And that little house on that furthest hill is becoming more prominent. Next one I went to is f8, which is most probably starting point of the sweet spot on most lenses. So corner sharpness, nice and crisp there. It's getting sharper on the edges, and the detail is definitely getting a lot better in a distance. Remember this little twig I showed you at f1.4? There it is at f8. Noticeable difference. Let's just have a look at the f1.4. You'll see it's basically blurred. f8 it is sharp. Right, so next I went to f11, which is most landscape shooters try and shoot at f11. Really good detail in the background, really nice corner sharpness happening. And the last one I did was at f16. Now on the f16 you'll start to see it's not as sharp anymore as the f11, especially in this particular little area there you'll notice it. f11 is definitely the sweet spot on this lens. Background detail from f11 to f16 is not much. Basically what's happening is your hyperfocal distance is getting closer to your camera. So at f1.4 hyperfocal is most probably about 6-7 meters away from the camera, whereas at f11 it is right there close by. So that's why you're getting a lot more detail in the background. So that's giving a quick look. Even at f1.4, corner sharpness is really good. And if you choose your focus point and your subject in your image really well, you can get some really, really good photos. And especially if you're playing with a little bit more creativity in your images, like landscape images, where if you had a little bit more interesting stuff happening in the background, it could have been quite nice with your focus point being on this front bush here. So for landscapes, beautiful. And you can see the lovely natural vignette this lens is creating on the f1.4. It's not as predominant on the f11. It is still there, but it is really noticeable on the 1.4. So let's have a look at a night photo I did at the same location. This was shot at f1.4, ISO 200, 25 seconds. So, and it was quite windy, so there might be slight little blur in the image, but let's just edit this one quickly. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fix my profile correction, and you'll see it brings out quite a bit. It takes away that heavy vignette, but the problem with that is it can bring out quite a bit of noise in your images. Focus being on the building, obviously, and with that, if you zoom in, that is sharp. So let's just up the exposure quite a bit so we can see what's happening there. That is sharp. Because this is f1.4, what you'll notice is the foreground is soft. And this is definitely focused further back than what the hyperfocal is. If you look at the rocks here, that is pin sharp. Pin sharp. But the foreground is completely soft. So that is something you'll need to bear in mind when shooting nightscapes and stuff where you want to keep that foreground as small as possible to avoid having something soft that might be distracting from the image. But other than that, as you can see, beautiful image, works perfectly. This could even double up as a day shot, even though this was shot at just after 9 in the evening. So let's have a look at some other images. I also took this out to shoot some portraits with people, and this is completely a shot that I've played with. This was shot at f1.4, ISO 50, 1/1600 of a second. This is straight out of camera, no editing done to it whatsoever. And the natural vignette this lens brings in, this was shot directly into the sun with the sun about there. The natural vignette this lens gives is magic. This actually looks like I've had a great filter on my lens. This lens can't take filters, so it is beautiful. Very basic editing that you can do to this is maybe just up the shadows a tad, and you'll have a good exposure on your subject. Now, something to keep in mind, it is f1.4, user error is major here. A slight tweak of your hand, slight misfocus, focus center point shifted, and you will be off where your focus was, simply because the depth of field is so narrow, and it is so close by. You've got quite a bit to play with at a f1.4. Next thing, here's another image. This was shooting out of the hip, stuck it out towards the subject, took up that photo where you get that nice emotion happening, nothing staged, nothing posed, and you can see this little boy's eyes is pin sharp. This was shot at f2, and at f2 you can see this magic background blur you get. It's really beautiful bokeh, and for a wide angle lens like that, it is stunning. You don't get that on wide angle lenses normally. So very happy for creative portraits.
definitely something to keep in mind. I won't use this all the time because it's so wide, it can give you, the perspective can be quite hectic. Big noses, big hands, big feet. So just keep that in mind. One of the last things I wanted to have a look at was the actual starburst this lens gives. Now this was, I stopped next to the road, walked into the vineyards, photographed the sun as it was sitting behind this piece of the mountain here. And you can see this was shot at f13, ISO 200, 1/160th of a second. And you can see it's a beautiful, beautiful starburst. It's really stunning. And for landscape shooters, getting a good starburst in your images when you still got the sun out is magic. And the other thing is, look at this beautiful natural vignette it created. Again, it looks like I've got a grad filter on, which I don't. And simple, up the shadows a tad, and you'll get all this lovely detail at the bottom coming back here. And with this, it is just stunning, especially for landscape shooters, and because we use filters all the time. Now the same scene I shot a panoramic image of, just to give you a good idea of what it looks like. There we go. Let's just constrain this crop here, so we can see the image. There we go. Stunning, beautiful starburst, beautiful blue in the sky on the side. You can see the light beams coming through the mountain there. It was a bit of a smoggy day, but beautiful light beams coming through there. The lens flare is minimal. That is so manageable, and it's actually pleasing. It's not big. It's not overly done. It's really nice. And the same on this image. You can just go back to that one. It's really, really small. And if you want to, that can be cloned out. I wouldn't do it. It will just take too long. But that is manageable if you want to get rid of it. So last two images. This was shot at a wedding at f1.4. I wanted to test the low light capabilities. This is completely natural light, unedited, and this was an actual wedding cake at the wedding. So it was made of cheese. Look at that. You can even see the detail on that cheese where the skin was. You can see the detail in the nuts on there. Where it starts falling off is from, I would say, it's about the edge of the passion fruit. You'll start to see the blur in the foreground. So again, choose your subject really well, put your focus point exactly where you want it, and keep it steady. If you do that, you're going to get magically sharp images at f1.4 with this lens. Again, if you're going to be shooting subjects that might move, you're going to have quite a few misses. Another landscape image just to show you some detail on this. This image has been edited. This is done and ready for print. And let's just zoom in. This is a multiple images I shot and stitched together for a panoramic photo. A little bit of distortion happening in the foreground, but that's understandable. It's a wide angle lens. But you can see the really nice detail. You can almost count the little leaves on these little plants. There's a cigarette butt laying there. If you zoom out, you can hardly even see it there. Let's zoom into the distance. Stunning detail. It really is magic. Really good detail in the rocks on that side. Look, there's people having a sundowner on the rocks there. Full image, you can hardly see them. It is stunning. It is stunning. And again, this was not shot with filters. Beautiful sky. I didn't add a sky in. Nothing. It was like that. It wasn't blended. There's a single exposures. I'm really happy with that. Last one is I shot this image. This is a blended exposure, final image ready for export, for the foreground and for the sky. Again, I didn't use any filters on there. Stunning starburst on the edge. There is the before photo, the overexposed image, and there's the underexposed image. And you can see that stunning starburst. And that's the final photo, blended and ready. So, long and short, fantastic lens. I love the natural vignette you get on this. It's built fantastic. It shoots amazing photos. It's sharp. And I'm going to be really sad to send this back to Sigma in about a week's time or so. So, if you are looking for wide angle lens, now the Canon shooters don't have a 20mm especially not in 1.4. I will consider this lens before anyone else. Only problem is the filters. If you're not going to be using filters that much, I'm a landscape shooter by heart. I love using filters. It makes the editing process so much easier. This is definitely a lens for you. So I hope you enjoyed this. I hope you found this informative. Please give me a follow on my Facebook pages. Subscribe to my YouTube. I've got more videos coming soon. Leave a comment. I will reply. And I hope to hear from everybody as soon as possible. See you guys soon.